So in general, I really like the shading of the fire and smoke at this point. I think that we're really landing on a great look with this. One thing we can do to improve it from here is add a little bit of motion blur to the flames. Now, this is going to be a very powerful effect because what we're doing is we're taking the velocity fields that we saved out and we're pushing these flame and density values in the direction of that velocity. And that's basically how this motion blur works. So let's go to our Pyro imports right here. On the Redshift OBJ tab, go to Volume and check on Use Velocity Grids. We want to check that on, and by default, this scale is at 1. Now you won't see anything until you check on motion blur on your render settings as well. So on this Redshift ROP, say Enable Motion Blur, that's all you have to do, and then go ahead and send out a test render. And as you can see, we have a drastically different results. Now, there is some behavior that I do like, and I do like the behavior of this motion blur towards the top of these flames. If you ever take a look at video of fire, it definitely makes this sort of look towards the top of the flame, and it really adds a lot to that lick of flame that you get towards the top. However, the downside to motion blur is that we've lost a lot of that interesting detail, especially along the body of the flame. So in my opinion, I like using this motion blur very sparingly. So instead of 1, I'm going to say 0.15. Take 15% of that, just a little bit, and that should be perfect for what we need. Okay, and as you can see, we do get some of this blurring towards the top. You can see it especially right around here, but the body still remains intact, and that's good. I actually think we could probably push this a little bit further, so maybe let's take the velocity grid scale to 0.25 right there, and that should do the trick. So I guess the moral of the story here is that when you're adjusting the motion blur, keep the detail in the body, but enable a little bit of that nice blurred effect towards the top, and that should do the trick. If you also want to get really fancy, what you could try doing is basically interpolating the velocity field values based off the distance from the logs. So that would be a nice little advanced side project that you can try doing. But anyway, I guess bottom line is we end up with something like this. I think 0.25 is pretty great. And when this gets moving really fast, then it becomes even more noticeable, and that's awesome. Also, whenever you turn up this motion blur, you're going to get these thicker bodies of clipped out white values. So something that you can do to combat this, if it becomes too washed out like that, is you can go back to the shader and let's go to the flame, and you can go change this new max to something like 2.2. Just turn it up a little bit more. That'll add some more holes to the flame, and especially right around here, that's totally great. So we end up with something like that, and I think that that's exactly what we're after. Okay, so there we go. We have that. In the next video, let's talk about these different post effects.